All right, let's call the meeting to order. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the November 18th, 2019 meeting of the City Plan Commission. Before we begin, I'll outline the procedure that will follow for our public hearing. As each agenda item is called, the applicant or his or her representatives and persons for the request will be allowed to speak. Then persons against the request will be allowed to speak. If there is opposition to the request, the applicant will be allowed to make a short rebuttal. All persons wishing to speak need to come to the microphone at the front of the room, which is over here. Please state your name and your address for the record when you approach the microphone. All statements made should be relevant to the agenda item and limited to 3 minutes. If there are several persons in favor of or opposed to a request, we encourage you to allow 1 or 2 persons to act as spokesperson for the group. If you like, a spokesperson for the group may request that the group stand and be recognized. While public discourse is very important to the Commission, we have to maintain order in the meeting so that all persons may be heard and city business may be conducted. If so directed by me, the Sergeant at Arms shall remove from this meeting any person while addressing the Commission or while attending the Commission meeting, making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, who becomes boisterous, or making unauthorized remarks from the audience, stomping of feet, whistling, yelling, or other similar demonstrations. The Commission members have reviewed each of these items in a previous work session this evening. The recommendations we make tonight to the City Council will be based on the work session and the information provided by staff, as well as any additional information presented here tonight. After completing the hearing on each item, the Commission will consider action on the item. The action taken tonight on these items will be in the form of a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will also conduct a hearing on these items. That meeting will be held on Tuesday, December 17th, 2019 at 6 p.m. at the Bosque Theater, the Waco Convention Center, 100 Washington Avenue. The record and recommendation of the Plan Commission and new testimony will be considered by the Council at that time. Now, the first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes for our last work and business meetings. Are there any changes or additions to these minutes? All right, seeing none, they stand approved as presented. Are there any changes? Let's see. The first item, just a note for our audience tonight. In terms of zoning applications, due to our anticipation of public input, we're going to pull Z1981 to the end. We don't think that will make those folks wait much longer, but it'll just be respectful of the time for the items that should move a little faster. So the first item are our subdivisions, and I think we're going to take up the final plat of the Steinbeck Farm Edition Lot 1, Block 1 replat first. Is that correct, Mr. Peters?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. This is a public hearing on the final plat of the Steinbeck Farm Edition Lot 1, Block 1 replat. Staff has reviewed this plat and recommend approval of the plat.
Okay. Is the applicant or his or her representative present to speak on this item too? Is anyone else present who would like to speak for or against the application? Any of the Commission members have any questions? All right. We'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion on this one?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve this plan subdivision based on staff comments.
All right. We have a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All right. Please poll the Commission.
Cole? Aye. Garcia?
Yes.
Gomez?
Not here.
Oh, sorry. Gretzinger?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Mayfield?
Yes.
And Bordereau?
Yes. All right. Motion carries, and it is approved. Now we will take up the preliminary plat of the Park Meadows Edition, the final plat and construction plans of the Foundation Edition, Block 1, Lot 2, ETJ, and the final plat and construction plans of the Buckingham Estates Edition, Part 5. City staff?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. This is a public hearing on the preliminary plat of the Park Meadows Edition, final plat and construction plans of Foundation Editions, Block 1, Lot 2, and the ETJ, and then final plat and construction plans of the Buckingham Estates Edition, Part 5. Staff has reviewed the plats and recommend approval of the plats and the construction plans subject to conditions that are provided in your packets.
All right. All right, is the applicant or his or her representative present to speak on any of these three items? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is David Peter. I'm the Vice President of Development for the applicant for the Park Meadows preliminary plat. My address is 3000 Illinois Avenue in Killeen, Texas. Although we believe this preliminary plat, having been through the Plan Commission back in mid-2018 and recommended for denial subject to meeting staff conditions, could have been sent to the City Council without returning here. In the interest of cooperation, we revised and resubmitted the preliminary plat to meet all of the prior staff conditions under the expectation that it would be recommended for a straight approval this evening. By way of background and as a refresher, the proposed changes generally amount to a minor revision of the layout only on the west side of the overall Park Meadows addition, substantial portions of which are already built with people living in it. Late Saturday afternoon on the 16th, we received a comment letter dated November 14th listing 12 new, albeit minor, technical comments, one of which is simply a notation that a final plat may not be applied for prior to the preliminary plat being approved, and other standard comments which we have acknowledged. Most of the remainder of the comments related to signing and proving ownership and authority of the signers. That comment letter was revised and supplemented again at 2:42 this afternoon with yet another request for added information. Over the course of yesterday and today, we made the necessary revisions to address every one of the comments that required a revision and resubmitted them online this afternoon, as well as to Ms. Rodriguez and Mr. Peters by email at 3:40 p.m. Notwithstanding the recommendation of staff that this be approved subject to conditions, which would appear to require us to come back through the Plan Commission yet again, we would respectfully ask you, the Plan Commission, to approve this plat without conditions, as they've been fully met now and were all non-substantive comments in any event, and send this to the City Council for a similar vote of approval. We do not believe there's any reason to further delay approval, which would only slow down our ability to submit the next phase final plat and construction plans for review and consideration. I'm happy to address any questions you might have on any of the comments, but they've been fully complied with at this point. So,
Following up with city staff, as you still stand here, and I appreciate that, is his point correct? Have all the conditions been met as of 5 p.m. this afternoon?
So we have not had a chance to review the response because it was received late this afternoon. The new ordinance that was approved in September per the new state law does require the city to respond within 15 days, Plan Commission, or it moves forward to City Council. If it is just administrative requirements, we have been waiving the Plan Commission part of it and just letting it go on the City Council, which I do believe would be the situation in this case, because they are administrative comments in nature. And so I don't think approving them with conditions will slow down the process any for the applicant.
Any other questions for the applicant or the city staff at this juncture? Thank you so much, sir.
thank you.
Is anyone else here to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? All right. Hearing none, or any other application. Is anyone here, in terms of these plats and subdivisions that have not been taken up, is anyone here to speak in favor of or in opposition to the other two? All right. Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Do we need to pull this one out separately? Or
I mean, our recommendation is that it would be approved with conditions.
Okay.
The way, yeah, with the rest of them.
So we can entertain a motion that deals with
Yeah.
all three of these or one individually, depending on how you feel so moved.
Okay. I move that we approve with conditions these three final plats and the associated construction plans.
Yep. A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Is there something wrong with my hands? Down with my hands?
Oh, ma'am, do you mind taking that call out into the hallway? Thank you, ma'am. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gretzinger.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Mayfield.
Yes.
Borderoux.
Yes. Motion carries. These are approved with conditions. Let's now take up our zoning applications. We have Z-19-78. What's the recommendation of city staff in this case?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Brittany Griffiths at property located at 721 Dickens Drive for a special permit for a short-term rental type 1 in R1B zoning district. We mailed out 29 notices on this one, had 3 returned, 2 opposed, 1 with no comment. We also received an email in opposition. Planning Services recommends approval of the special permit subject to the special provisions and conditions, and based on the findings, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, that the proposed use is compatible with appropriate and orderly development of the area in which is located, that the proposed use would not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception, and that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use. And these are findings required per section 28.122 of the zoning ordinance.
Is the applicant or the applicant's representative present to speak on this item?
I'm here.
Yes, ma'am. Would you like to say anything?
Please approve. I just want to rent my house.
Okay. If you'd like to make a formal comment, you can at the podium, or you can elect not to, whichever is your pleasure.
Hi, I'm Brittany. I've got a couple extra rooms in my house, and I really need to make some extra cash. And we're looking to run a really quiet, respectful Airbnb. No partying, nothing crazy. Just a couple of rooms that need to be occupied. So I'd appreciate it if y'all would approve my application.
Okay. And your address is 721 Dickens Drive, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone here to speak, also here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Oh, yes, sir. Okay. Please state your name and your address, sir.
Randall Cook, 721 Dickens Drive. I'm gonna speak for her. There would be plenty of house rules that state no partying or anything like that as well. And I don't know what the oppositions have said. May I have a readout of any of that?
I think there should be publicly available comment cards that were submitted to the commission that you might be able to review. And then also in this hearing, there will be individuals that will have the chance, if they're here, to speak in opposition, and then the applicant has a chance to make a rebuttal, meaning a response to those remarks.
Okay. As far as maybe some concerns of extra traffic or anything like that, to me, I couldn't see how that would be considered extra traffic if it was a fully run single-family home unit with a full house of people. So, there's some concerns in that way. I think, if you just have a regular set of family in there that are driving all the time, I don't think that would be a concern. But that's my piece. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here on this application here to speak in opposition to this application? Or to speak at all on this application in any respect? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve Z-1978 for staff special provisions and conditions.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on the commission? All right. Hearing none, please poll the commission.
Cole.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gretzinger.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Mayfield.
Yes.
Bordereau.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Application is approved. What is our next case?
Yes, sir. This is a public hearing on request from Andy Sheehy at property located at 1823 Connor Avenue for a special permit for short-term rental type 2 in R1B zoning district. We mailed out 24 notices on this one and had 0 return. Planning Services recommends approval of special permit subject to the special provisions and conditions and based on the following findings. 1, that the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. 2, the proposed use is compatible with appropriate and orderly development of the area in which it's located. 3, the proposed use would not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than the use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception. And 4, that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use.
All right. Is the applicant or his or her representative present to speak on this application? Is anyone here present to speak on this application? All right. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I move we approve the request for the special permit, subject to special provisions and conditions based on staff.
And we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gretzinger.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Mayfield.
Yes.
Bordereau.
Yes. All right. Our next case is Z-19-80. What is the city staff's recommendation?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Shehorn Enterprises LLC at the property located at 5201 Steinbeck Bend to amend the special permit for a commercial funeral home in R1B zoning district. We mailed out 3 notices and had 0 return. Planning Services recommends approval of the amendment of the special permit subject to the special provisions and conditions and based on the following findings. That the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan, that the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the area in which is located, that the proposed use will not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception, and that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use. I did want to point out the change in this special permit on the conditions is that it is going from a condition that did not allow for the special permit to be transferred to allowing the permit to be transferred under certain conditions, and those are spelled out in item 1 in your conditions.
Is the applicant or his or her representative present to speak on behalf of the application? Yes, sir. State your name and address, please.
My name's Brent Shehorn. I live at 316 Keys Creek Drive, and I'm available for any further discussion on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Is anyone else here present to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend approval to case Z 1980, based on staff findings and conditions.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gretzinger.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Mayfield.
Yes.
Bordereau.
Yes, motion carries, and the application is approved. Now moving on to, we are going to, again, take Z19-81 to the end, which should not be too long from now, and take up Z-19-82. City staff, what's the recommendation in this case?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on request from Kimberly Daly at the property at the northeast corner of North 19th Street and Rock Creek Road and adjacent to 6417 North 19th Street for a land use designation change from suburban residential to urban residential and to rezone from R1A to O3. We mailed out 19 notices on this one, and it just had one returned with some concerns. Planning Services recommends approval of land use designation change based on the following findings. One, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for zoning districts allowed in the proposed urban residential land use designation. And two, there's urban residential land use in the vicinity of the subject property. Planning Services also recommends approval of the zone change request based on the following findings. One, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan as revised. Two, the property meets all size and width requirements for O3 zoning. Three, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O3 zoning. Four, the property is located at a corner of an arterial, which is North 19th Street, and a collector street, which is Rock Creek Road. And five, the area has been transitioning to mixed-use zoning districts such as O3 zoning.
Is the applicant or his or her representative present to speak on the application?
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Daly. I reside at 2712 Cumberland Avenue. We're looking to build our permanent bakery location there on that property and having living quarters above it. So that's why we're seeking that O3 zoning, so we can live above our bakery. So I would appreciate you guys approving our application.
Any questions for the applicant? All right, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here? Yes, sir, please. State your name and address.
Eric O'Neill. I live at 1200 Joy. I live literally down the block from where they're going to be, and I support them.
Okay. Question? Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this application? All right. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend we approve Z 1982 of the suburban residential to urban residential and from R1A to O3 for staff's findings.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, please poll the commission.
Cole.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gretzinger.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Mayfield.
Yes.
Bordereau.
Yes. Motion carries. Application is approved. Thank you. Let's move to zoning case Z-19-83.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Basilio and Bertha Cano for property located at 3543 Old Marlin Road to rezone from M2 to O3. We mailed out 8 notices on this and had 0 return. Planning Services recommends approval of the zone change request based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O3 zoning. 3, the property meets all the size and width requirements for O3. 4, the property is located near the intersection of 2 arterial streets, which is Loop 340 and Old Marlin Highway. And 5, the proposed O3 zoning provides for a better opportunity for compatible development adjacent to the neighboring residential properties.
Is the applicant or the applicant's representative present to speak in favor of the application? Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Bertha Cano, and my address is 1748 Old Bethany Road. And we bought this land, and we would like to do a barn dominium there, okay, and maybe a small catering service. And we would like to see if y'all will rezone it for us. I mean, if it can be done. Okay.
Any questions for our applicant? All right. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this application or has any general comment on this application? All right. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve Z-19-83 per staff's recommendations and findings.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion among the commission? All right. Please poll the commission.
Cole.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gretzinger.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Mayfield.
Yes.
Bordereau.
Yes. Motion carries. Application is approved. Now we'll move to the application review Z-19-84, the approval of final PUD.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this is a public hearing on a request from Gwen King, a Quick Trip Real Estate Project Manager on properties northwest of intersection of the South New Road and South Jack Colgan Expressway for the approval of the final PUD plan for a plan unit development currently on property described as a 7.023 acre tract of land situated in the TJ Chambers Survey Abstract Number 7, McLennan County, Texas, and being out of the remaining portion of a called 101.9 acre tract of land described in volume 19, page 536 of the deed records of McLennan County, Texas, located in the 2400 block of South New Road, and 2, a .6361 acre tract of land situated in the TJ Chambers Survey Abstract Number 7, the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, and being a portion of Lot 7, Block 1, in the Royal King Plaza addition known as 4017 South Jack Colgan Expressway. And we did mail out 21 notices on this one and had 0 returned. Planning Services does recommend approval of the final PUD based on the following findings and conditions. The findings are the final PUD plan is consistent with the approved concept PUD plan, conditions of the approved concept PUD plan, and the requirements of the PUD ordinance. And 2, the circulation plan, public facilities and service plan, preliminary architectural plan, and site development and landscaping plan, including the final PUD plan, are adequate. We do have 2 conditions. 1, at the time of development, full building plans must be submitted, meeting all City of Waco development requirements, including but not limited to the following: building code, site grading and drainage, parking, signage, vehicle, pedestrian access and circulation, landscaping, refuse, location and access, and fire protection, location and access. Building permits will not be issued until full compliance with all the development standards of the City of Waco and the approved PUD plans. And then 2, if the concept plan is disapproved by City Council during their November 19th, which is tomorrow, meeting, this recommendation for approval of the final PUD plan will be null and void.
Any questions for city staff before we call our applicant? Okay. All right, is the applicant or the applicant's representative present to speak in favor of the application?
Good evening, Gwen Keene with Quick Trip. Glad to be back again. Always like to come to Waco. So we've reviewed everything and we're fine with all the conditions, but we are requesting this evening an adjustment in the quick conditions. When it comes to signage, so we've looked at the signage further with the high-rise sign. We've done some sign rides. Our concerns is with the length of the ramp and the decision-making timing that a driver, because we all want to know what the price of gas is, right? And so a lot of times we see the price of gas and we're like, you know what, I'm going to go on and get it because it dropped a dime, which is really cool these days, isn't it? So people tend to make those traffic adjustments very quickly. It's usually about a 2-second adjustment. So after doing some further looking into this measure, we're going to request that the condition regarding the sign, high-rise sign, if we could have that adjusted to what we originally requested, which was the 360 square feet. Other than that, we're good.
What's the current?
Currently, under the condition, we're allowed a 50-foot sign, 280 square feet. So we're requesting 360 square feet in order that we have adequate signage for not only our button, but also to have those pricers on there as well. And again, we've kind of talked about how Quick Trip's a little different. You know, even though this is a travel center or a truck stop, we're not the typical truck stop. This is short term. We're not driven like other competitors that have fleet accounts that know where all of those locations are. We're more driven by the short-term haulers, the local haulers, or those who just want to get in and get out. And so that's why our signage is vital as to where we're located in those decision-making maneuvers on the highway.
Any questions for this applicant? While you're still here,
Sure.
City staff, would you respond to that request?
Sure. So the recommendation for the 50-foot and the 260 280 square feet was based on our ordinance that allows square footage based on road frontage, and then a maximum size height of the sign is 50 feet along I-35. I will say the height is measured from the travel lanes of the interstate and not the grade of where the sign is. I do believe the grade of the interstate is a little higher, so the sign actually will be allowed to go a little bit higher than 50 feet based on the grade of the travel lanes for the interstate. But that's what our recommendation was based on, what the ordinance allows.
Okay. Would they need a variance, or is this because it's a PUD, they can request it in the PUD without a separate variance?
You can do it either way. You can request it as part of the PUD. We do have we also have a variance process once something's approved, that it could go through the variance. And, that's based on physical factors. If you have a overpass that's in the way, or, the grade or something like that, where they can approve variances based on physical limitations of the property.
And this first you've heard of this request too?
No, we've been talking about that, and
Of course, you're saying that.
We had asked for that in our original submittal, and we understood the condition, but in order for us to come tonight, we wanted to make sure that we had done our adequate sign right and made sure that what we were requesting what we believe was in reason to request. So at this point, we're not requesting a height adjustment as much as we're requesting the square footage, which is the 360.
Is the high-rise custom pole sign, are the measurements in our packet, is that the already agreed upon, is that the 280 square feet, or is that the 360?
The elevation we submitted was 360, and then I believe it was at 60 feet.
yeah, so there is a condition as part of the concept plan that limits it to the 260 or 280. 280 and 50 feet. So their final plans, that's a condition of their final plan, that it's consistent with the concept condition.
I've got some issues with changing what we're doing with this lake part of the game. And I don't have a problem going through with what y'all have, what you submitted to it, but I got some problems changing without you having more time to review it and respond.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you so much. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak in favor of this application? All right. Please state your name and address.
It's Mark Furman, a representative for QT. I think one thing that we just want to make clear is that if it's not going to be approved this way and y'all want to go through the way that it's been recommended by city staff, we understand that. We don't want to risk losing anything else. We can always address it in the variance if we need to prove the physical limitations. But we just want to make sure we were stressing that we wanted to do the 360 on the square footage. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of the application? Anyone here in opposition to the application? All right. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. And do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend approval of case Z 1984 based on the submittal that we've been given, based on staff findings and conditions.
Just to clarify your motion, that's the 280 square foot sign, is that correct?
280 square foot sign area.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Gretzinger.
Yes.
Harris.
Yes.
Mayfield.
Yes.
Warderoo.
Yes. Motion carries. Application is approved. And now I believe we will go back to Z-19-81. Is that correct, Mr. Peters?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir. This is a public hearing on a request from DACO Capital LLC for property northeast of the intersection of West Lake Shore Drive and North 19th Street and west of 1001 West Lake Shore Drive for a special permit for outdoor recreational amusement facility in a RV park in R1B and C2 zoning district. We did mail out 12 notices on this one and had 2 returned in opposition. Planning Services recommends approval of the special permit subject to the special provisions and conditions and based on the following findings. 1, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. 2, the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the area in which it is located. 3, the proposed use would not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion, noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of the special exception, and that available community facilities and services, including the road system providing access to the proposed use, are adequate for the proposed use. I did want to point out some of the conditions. We do have, under the special provisions and conditions, we do have 18 conditions, and I wanted to point out a couple of those that are unique to this that aren't our standard. We do have a condition in there that allows this permit to be issued to Northgate Waco LLC and may not be transferred or assigned to any other companies. We also have a condition in there about the permit is specific to this location and can be transferred to another location. We do have a requirement about the platting of the property. The property must be platted before issuance of a RV park license or building permit. Plat requirement will be the construction of a new street and utilities to provide access and utility service to the site. We do have a condition in there about the requirement for obtaining an RV park license before development of the site. A traffic impact analysis is required to provide before issuance of the RV park license or building permit. Based upon this study, the developer may be required to construct additional street and traffic improvements at time of development, which are roughly proportionate to the impact of the proposed development. We have a condition that no HUD code manufactured homes or mobile homes be allowed on the site, and that all vehicles, including RVs, must have current registration, inspections, and license plate, except for the park model of RVs that are owned by the permittee. That all buildings or structures shall be a maximum height of 35 feet in height. That's the allowable height for the existing R1B zoning district. We do have a requirement in there about providing a tree survey for the wooded area along the river. Removal of heritage trees in this area shall be prohibited, and then significant trees shall not be removed in a location unless it's in a location that conflicts with proposed streets. A heritage tree shall mean any tree over 24 inches or more in diameter and include ash trees, cypress trees, elms, maples, all oak trees, pecan, walnut, Arizona walnut, and eastern black walnut. And then we also have a definition for significant trees. And then we have a requirement in there for all lighting on the site shall be dark sky friendly, as defined by the International Dark Sky Association. That basically means the lighting has to shine down or have some sort of cover so it doesn't spill out to other adjacent properties. And then the last condition is a pedestrian way providing connection to the city's properties, River Bend Park, and the Mammoth National Monument to the North 19th Street Bridge shall be provided. Excuse me. Location of this pedestrian way shall be mutually agreed upon by the City of Waco and the permittee during the Bosque River Trail planning process and development review process of the site. That's all I have.
All right. Any questions for city staff about this before we? All right. Is the applicant or his or her representative available to speak?
Good evening, members of the commission. I'm David Dixon. I live at 5500 Pointwood Circle here in Waco. And tonight I'm representing the seller of the property, which is Pebble Creek Development Company, which is a LLC owned by Mrs. F.M. Young, who's present here tonight. She has some property owned by Pebble Creek under contract with Daco Capital LLC, which is a limited liability company owned by local people here in Waco. And she has put under contract approximately 200 acres of Pebble Creek's land at the intersection of 19th Street and Lakeshore Drive. I think you're probably familiar with the Riverbend Shopping Center that's right there on the corner of 19th and Lake Shore. I don't think it's any big secret that HEB owns that shopping center. Mr. Young, before he died, sold them the property in back of and on the sides of the shopping center, and that's currently held by HEB for their use or for development. This 200 acres wraps around behind the shopping center and behind the property that HEB owns. It has frontage on Lake Shore and up by the river, and it has frontage on 19th Street. The property is currently zoned commercial on some of the strips on Lake Shore and 19th, and the balance of it is zoned residential. The reason for the special permit that we need on this property is because the buyers have entered into or plan to enter into a joint venture with Northgate Resorts LLC. Northgate Resorts LLC is out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's owned by the Bossenbecker family, who I have met. They own resort camping facilities, is what they call it. Some people call it glamping. It's camping, but it has a lot of amenities that go with it. They intend to joint venture this project with the buyers and spend somewhere north of $20 million, possibly as much as $30 million, in acquiring the property, developing the property, and constructing the improvements. The improvements would be a camp that goes under the trade name Jellystone, as in Jellystone Park from Yogi Bear cartoons back as far back as the 60s when I was a kid. Northgate is the largest franchisee of Jellystone Parks. They operate 12 parks literally between Virginia and North Carolina and California. They have facilities in Texas at Canyon Lake, and they also have a facility on the Guadalupe River in Kerrville. They're familiar with the Texas market, and they're very excited for this opportunity to come to Waco. The way the camp will be set up is that there will be amenities there at the camp that can be used by people that stay there. I want to be clear what this isn't. This isn't an amusement park, okay? It's not another Hawaiian Falls where anybody can buy a ticket and bring the family. To use the amenities, you have to be staying there. The site would have spots for RVs to hook up with sewer and water and electric. And we also would have cabins there that a person can rent. They're small cabins, about 400 square feet. They're designed to house a family of 4 to 5 and have enough room. And
Mr.
so you
Dixon,
can rent a cabin.
Mr. Dixon, your comments are coming to an end in terms of time, if you don't mind
Okay.
summarizing and concluding. Or,
I think
or if someone else wants to kind of
Someone else, I think Gary Young is here, and he's in favor. And Gary, raise your hand. I think he'd yield me his time. Okay.
Well, we've got 10. How many do you want? About more than 10.
Well, do you want to
I can wrap it
stand
up
up and be counted, I suppose, or raise your hand? And these are those in favor of the application, is that correct? Okay, I can't.
So,
Can we
yeah,
get a count out of
yeah,
that?
there's 10. So if they can give Mr. Dixon up to 10 minutes, but they would forfeit their right to get up and talk. Is everybody okay with that?
Raise your hand if you're also, if that's acceptable to you in terms of forfeiting your time, and you've also raised your hand that you're here in support. Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Meyer, your hand's not up, is it? Yeah. It was earlier, Okay, good.
Okay. So, Mr. Dixon, you have I suppose 7 more minutes.
I can wrap it up quickly.
Okay.
The Jellystone Franchise Company has about 75 plus sites around the United States. Northgate is the largest franchisee in that system. This will not necessarily be a Jellystone. It may bear a different name, such as Resort on the Bosque River Resort, something like that. But the reason people would want to be at Jellystone is the same way hotels want to fly a Hilton or a Marriott flag. You got a reservation system. You have people built in that are used to that brand. And this is designed for people with children. It's a way to take your kids, get in your RV, go spend 3 or 4 days on the Bosque River, let the kids get outside away from the television and experience camping. The amenities would be an office and kind of a clubhouse built on the property. It would have a swimming pool. It would, one thing that's been discussed is a miniature golf course, like a putt-putt. Another thing that's been discussed is laser tag for the kids. It's been a long day. I've been laboring for Mrs.
like
Young
chores.
too long. For laser tag, and they have what they call rangers that would have outdoor activities, lifeguards for the pool. We have met with neighbors twice. We've had one meeting, most recently last Friday at my office, and we were well attended at that meeting, and the first meeting was well attended. We think we have support in the community and in the neighborhood. I think a lot of the worries are how these things are operated. You know, people are worried about, well, what about access to the river? We're talking about 1 or possibly 2 designated access points along this 100-acre strip. So it's not going to be everybody just runs to the river wherever they want to. They'll kind of be funneled, if you will, into certain access points. We may want to have paddle boards. We may want to have, a fishing dock where people can go down and fish. I personally don't see many people swimming with the water moccasins in the Bosque River at that site, but somebody may want to do that. And what the Northgate people tell us is, if you got a river and you got a pool, most people want to go swim in the pool, and that's where they think most of the swimming would take place. We've agreed to be part of the dark skies policy with the downward directional light so we don't bother neighbors. The rules typically provide for a quiet time. The one in Kerrville, for example, is quiet between 11 p.m. and 8 a.m. No fireworks are allowed. No firearms are allowed. No ATVs, motorcycles for driving around. If you have an electric golf cart, those are allowed, or we can rent you one. Alcohol, you can consume alcohol inside your cabin or inside your RV. If you want to take it outside, it has to be in a nondescript container. In other words, you can't walk around with a beer can in your hand. It's a family-friendly place. That's why we have a cartoon bear as our mascot. And it's going to be operated with that in mind. And we, would hope to be a good neighbor. We have a couple of people here to speak for us tonight. I'm authorized to speak for Gary and Kenneth Young, Triad Development Company. They own about 100 acres across 19th Street behind Fidelity Bank, and they have voiced their approval for this project. And the fact that they're Gloria's nephews and she'd kill them doesn't have anything to do with it. That's all we have. I'll answer any questions or anything else.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Our engineer, David Mark, is here also. The CP&Y has been engaged to be the engineers on the project.
I have at least one question for him. I don't, maybe others, or however y'all want to handle it. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Joe.
In terms of sewer, I know you got the RV spaces, and then you've got what appears to be some permanent living quarters, cabins or whatever. And how's the sewage disposal to be handled in those situations?
Yeah, on-site, to be honest, Joe, on-site, we haven't really got to that level yet. I'm assuming that there'll be some sort of internal collection system.
Or if you say on-site, you're talking about the RV?
Well, inside the park, I would assume that for the RVs and facilities that are owned by the applicant or the permittee or the owner, there'd be some sort of on-site collection for those. Now, the other RVs that come, there'll be some sort of dump station or something like that where they can discharge of their waste. And in general, that whole area there will require a lift station to be built to get the sewer out. We've looked at that before previously when there was a different property that was looking to build right there on Lakeshore, and your raw water line and the domestic water line kind of block the access to the sewer on the opposite side of Lakeshore. So what we would plan long-term is, well, you know, this development would obviously have to put that in to serve it, but as a regional solution for the entire area, there would be a lift station that would be built that would collect the water from basically everything on that side of Lakeshore between there and the river. And then it would pump in a force main across Lakeshore and tie into a manhole over there, kind of really close to the ball field over there. That takes it across the bosque, then to that other lift station over there by the tennis courts. Okay.
I forgot to mention a couple of the other amenities would be a store, kind of a camp store located on the premises, and a restaurant where people can go eat. And Joe, in answer to your question, the restaurant, the store, the office, we've got enough land above the floodplain to where those can be constructed above the flood. Within the flood would be some cabins. But let me tell you the way these cabins are built. They are really RVs. When you look at them, you think, well, that's a little 400 square foot cabin. It's got a skirt around the bottom of it. Well, the skirt is covering up wheels because it's a custom-made RV dressed up to look like a cabin. And the reason they're on wheels is so you can move them out of the floodplain in the event that there is a flood event going to happen and it's not a permanent structure built within the floodplain. And I didn't know they had such things, but that's what they intend to use for cabins.
Can we have the gentleman that just made a comment just give his full name and address? You can just stand up and give it to us so we can hear it.
David Walker, I live at 8610 Oakdale.
Thank you so much. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of this application who did not raise their hand to cede their time? Okay.
Good evening. I'm Alice Ogden, and I reside at 3016 Deerwood in Waco. And I am speaking in support of the Brazos River Resort project. I'm invested in this area through our family farm on North 19th for over 66 years. And so my brother still continues to live at our farm, and we are all very protective of the area, and we think that the proposed development will enhance the site. We've had the opportunity to meet with the local developers, DACO, and also the proposed franchisee, Northgate Resort. Both groups are highly professional in their approach to the plans and the development. We feel their plans will be a good addition to the area and further promote Waco. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? All right. Anyone else speak in favor who did not cede their time to the last first speaker?
I'm Johnette McCowan. I reside at 3606 Greenleaf Drive. I'm the president of McLennan Community College at 1400 College Drive. And we've taken a look at this to make sure that we see no problems with our property, and we are in support.
Thank you. Anyone else here to speak in favor of who did not cede their time? Okay. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in opposition to this application?
I would.
Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and address.
My name is Barbara O'Neill, and I live at 905 Joy Drive, Waco, Texas. I want to thank the Planning Commission members. We know that you give your time voluntarily to do this work for the City of Waco, and thank you to the city staff for the many services you provide to operate a well-ordered community. I'm the owner of 29.3 acres of land out of the John Tucker survey on the north side of the Bosque River below the Lake Waco Dam. My property, as well as the property of about 12 other landowners, some who are in attendance here tonight, is located directly across the Bosque River from the special permit request of the 100-acre tract, which about 80% of those acres lie in the FEMA regulatory floodplain and floodway. The owners of the 100 acres is seeking a special permit from the city to allow building an outdoor recreational and amusement facility and RV park. Now, while the former speaker said, oh, it's not an amusement park, I'm a little weary about the title amusement facility. That's a pretty broad title that can allow a lot of things to go in there. But I'm here to speak against the Planning Commission recommending approval of the special permit to the Waco City Council. The majority of the land that all of us own along the north banks of the Bosque River is located in the FEMA floodplain and floodway. However, just enough of our land is above the floodplain, so we have built our homes on this property and we live there year-round. In fact, my family for 4 generations, my parents, grandparents, children, and grandchildren have lived on some part of their lives on this property for 68 years. We chose to settle on this land because it was in the floodplain, and the land across the Bosque River was too, with the belief that the natural beauty and habitats of the wild animals and birds of the area would be preserved along with both sides of the Bosque River. We did this even with the knowledge that our property may flood at some point in time. We don't have large numbers of people to bring to request for non-approval of the special permit, but we can tell you about our story of living on the banks of the Bosque River and the reasons it's not in the best interest of our city to approve this request. As a child and later as an adult, I witnessed the life of this river from the times it flooded out of its banks, flooding all of our land except 2 acres where our house was located. In fact, my grandfather wouldn't quit eating breakfast until the floodwaters were at the door of the house and he had to climb out through the bedroom window. So we know big floods. And the last time that I remember that happened in 1957. But since 1957, Lake Waco was enlarged and the floodwaters have remained within the banks of the river. You see, the Bosque River below the dam provides flood control by regulating the water release from Lake Waco from the tributaries above the lake. When it rains heavily on the Bosque watershed above Lake Waco, floodwaters are released into the Bosque River below the dam. The fast rushing waters fills the river channel to slightly below the south banks where this permit is requested and about halfway up the north banks.
Yes, ma'am. I would say a lot of us are reading along with your remarks, but you've kind of reached a 3-minute mark. So do you want to do as the first speaker did
yes,
for the application?
Yes,
so are
I
there
have.
10 people that would cede their time and raise their hand to do so? The city staff, do we see 10 hands or do we see see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 8.
Mark?
Okay, now I think we got Mark. That might be 9, or is that 10?
I got 10.
Do we have 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yay, we made it. Thank you.
Got to 10, so I think that gives you 7 more minutes.
Oh, okay.
And if you
I
want to
can-
summarize some of this too, or you
No,
can.
I spent time writing this. I'm going to read all of it.
We are listening.
During the release of water, the river is unusable for recreation use or anything except carrying floodwaters to the Gulf of Mexico with little or no property damage to owners living on the Bosque River or the Brazos below the dam. In the last 5 to 7 years, to my memory, the Bosque River has been on the rise several times, in most cases not for a few days, but for weeks or maybe a month or two at a time. And often the floodwater release is during summer months, peak season for the permit requesters, as stated in their advertising materials. You see, the Bosque River is part of the flood control for this part of Texas. So the Bosque River's primary purpose is flood control for the city of Waco and McLennan County. On the south side of the Bosque River, on the 100 acres, 80 acres in the floodplain and floodway, is mainly flat, treeless farmland. In the past, when the floodwaters breached the lower south bank, this water didn't stop spreading till it reached, as we said, the bottom of the hill on Lakeshore Drive. And I'm sorry, my mouth has gone dry. I'm nervous.
Oh, that's all right.
I brought me some water. I don't speak as often as David does, so I'm not as fluent as this. So we ask, why is it smart flood control for the city to approve the location of a 100-acre amusement facility RV park on the lower south banks of the Bosque River, mainly in the FEMA floodplain and floodway? Everyone knows we have no control over climate. Floods are droughts. And when will we have our 500-year flood? Climate is not predictable over the long term. When not flooded, the Bosque River is at a standstill and does not have a continuous flow that helps to wash out the river because it lies between two dams, Lake Waco and the low water dam on the Brazos. This lack of constant flow calls into question the safety of the river for recreational use in the summer because of bacteria that lives and grows, especially in warm water, and is dangerous to the health and lives of humans and animals. Yes, the river does have a recreational use when not in a flood stage. The Bosque River, like our Cameron Park, is a natural jewel open for the free use by our residents. If this special permit change is approved, it will in effect consume and use the heart of the Bosque River in the quadrant that's made up by North 19th Street and Lakeshore Drive. By my estimate, it's 1.5 to 2 miles of river frontage, significantly limiting the use by Waco citizens who enjoy the outdoors in canoes, kayaks, small fishing boats, and cherish having a place within the city limits to enjoy the natural beauty and wildlife that grows and lives along the Bosque River. Now, we're also concerned about the negative environmental use impact, and we ask if there's been an environmental impact study done, and if not, we'd like to request one. The materials furnished by DACO states that a maximum potential of units of 350. At full capacity, say 2.5 people per unit, that's 875 people. This number of people will have a large negative environmental impact along this part of the Bosque River. At another place in DACO materials, it stated that plans are to have 150 cabins on portable wheels. That's mobile temporary housing in my definition. And then 150 RV spaces. Think about it from your own personal neighborhood's perspective. What would be the environmental impact in your neighborhood of 875 people descending on you, some dragging their RVs or staying in mobile cabins for an undetermined length of time, moving in and out year-round? The material from DACO said some people may be there for weeks or months, and I want to know, are we to become a snowbird retreat? If so, there must be other better locations in Waco and McLennan County for this type of temporary housing. We're told the shelf life for cabins is about 10 years. How is that a long-term planned use for this property? There's been some discussion about sewer lines. Some of them will be in the floodplain close to the river. What happens if there's a break or a drop or a spillage or of sewage can end up in the river? Runoff into the river from the land that no longer can soak up the rain into the agricultural fields because of RV and portable housing pads. The south side of the Bosque River now will have nightlight pollution, but I didn't know about the request of the downlights, so that's good news. We are concerned about noise pollution. Today you can hear noise from the traffic of Lakeshore Drive, the ball fields, soccer fields, concerts at MCC, at our homes, not just on the banks of the river. I was glad to hear that you've requested quiet time between 11 and 8 a.m. However, I go to bed at 8 o'clock at night, so I don't know about that. The Bosque River is a conduit for sound up and down the river channel, and people staying at the Bosque River Resort will significantly increase the noise level from vehicles. You said no motorbikes, but probably boats, people, music, concerts from time to time. Who else knows what other noise level? Concerned about the traffic impact, and I hear you're going to have a traffic impact analysis, so that's good to know. We're asking the Planning Commission to not approve a special permit use that caters mostly to people who live outside of Waco, McLennan County, with the means to pay for access to the amenities of our city's Bosque River. However, I didn't bring hordes of people here with me tonight, so I don't know. But if the Planning Commission does recommend the special use permit, by the way, thanks for making it non-transferable, we request that the boat launch dock and the event pavilion be located more toward the east end of the property, across from the Mammoth site, rather than toward the west, up the river, and across from our properties. I close with a statement that County Judge Felton made last week at the city-county luncheon hosted by the Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce, and it was printed in the Waco Trib. He said, "Can we be as smartly visionary as earlier generations of Wacoans were when looking out on our benefit?" And I say that to you tonight. Can we be as visionary about the use of our Bosque River for generations to come? Maybe we can make this part of the Bosque River Waco Central Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Is there anyone who did not cede their time among the gallery who would like to speak in favor of this application?
Eric O'Neill.
Opposition, I apologize. Opposition.
Eric O'Neill. I live at 1200 Joy, directly across from this planned development. Mr. Dixon, you didn't call me at all.
You didn't call me, you didn't call me.
Yeah, I don't think that was a fair statement, sir. The environmental degradation that this park will cause, it will be a tragedy for the city of Waco. If you do this, future generations of Wacoans are going to curse your names. I have lost 2 boats in that river. I have the only boathouse currently on that river. I've lost 2 boats in it. The river can flood, can go up 4 feet in 3 hours. You are going to have massive amounts of trash. You're going to have people that are, you say you're going to have quiet hours at 11 o'clock at night. Who's going to enforce that, sir? You going to have police there? Who's going to enforce the liquor laws down there? Who's going to enforce no fireworks down there? We have livestock on our side of the river. Who's going to take care of that? We were here first. Nobody in this that's proposing this lives on this river. I'm sorry, do you live directly across from this?
Sir, we would ask if you direct your comments to the Plan Commission and not to individuals in the gallery.
I strongly am.
And sir, we would also ask members of the gallery, we know that you feel strongly about this and we truly respect that, but we would just ask that you cede any comments to those that have already been made, or if you did not raise your hand, we'll have a chance to present comments. But thank you, sir. Feel free to continue on.
There are bald eagles that I have seen down on that river. There are other kinds of eagles. No environmental study has been performed. And I emphasize again the amount of trash that's going to be taken care of. Are they going to have people there continuously to take care of 700 to 800 people on a weekend? I rather doubt it. Are they going to have police and security there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week throughout the summer to prevent people from drinking and partying after hours? Otherwise, I fear that this will become a public nuisance for the people that live on the north side of the river. I strongly encourage the commission to vote this down.
Thank you. Any questions for any of the... Is there anyone else that would like to speak in opposition that did not cede their time? Okay. Hearing none, we will close the public hearing. Oh, I'm sorry. We have an applicant's rebuttal.
A couple of things, Mr. Chairman. Let me clarify about the meetings. I got a call from my friend Jeff Bird, who's here tonight, local realtor. And he said he lived across the river and he had some problems, and other people did too. So I invited him to come to my office Friday morning, and I would have our representatives there from the buyer. Ms. Young was there. And we would go over everything and talk to him about the projects. And I asked him to please pass the word amongst the people that were contrary to this idea, because I didn't know who they were. And I said, Jeff, just let everybody come. We had a good meeting. We had Mark Jackson there. We had Debbie Wright Hood representing herself, and I believe members of the Dwyer family that was there. Jeff Bird was there. There was a representative from MCC and a fellow named Alex Dominguez. So we had a pretty good turnout last Friday. And no, I did not call every property owner on the other side of the river. I did not know who they were. So I wanted to clear that up. As far as enforcement, I failed to mention, they say we're going to hire about 100 people. So in answer to the question of who's going to enforce these things, like no alcohol out in beer cans, no fireworks, no firearms, the staff will, just like a hotel. If you're causing trouble in a hotel, they kick you out. And if somebody causes trouble and doesn't abide by the rules here, they'll get kicked out. We think this is a great project in that it fits with the whole neighborhood around there. The ballparks are right across the river, Hawaiian Falls, across Lake Shore, and down some before you get to MLK. The tennis center, of course, and then MCC does concerts on the Bosque River stage, which is right across Lake Shore. So we think this is a very positive project for this part of town. It is a great use of floodplain land, which would otherwise be non-productive. It brings people to town. Waco's in a great tourist environment right now, and we intend to be a part of that and to help that along. And on behalf of DACO and Northgate, and on behalf of Mrs. Young, we respectfully request you approve the special permit. Thank you very much.
Mr. Dixon, in terms of amenities, did you say, all amenities are, will day use essentially be allowed for any of the amenities, restaurants, hotels?
It's my understanding that some Jellystones have that, Mr. Harris. It's my understanding that we will not be issuing daily permits where you can come on and just use the pool. Now, that being said, I don't know if that applies to the restaurant, whether I could drive on there and use the restaurant or not. But as far as using the facilities, no day use. You have to be staying there. And as I understand it, the maximum stay would be 30 days. That's the longest anyone can stay. It's about $60 a night. So if you're staying 30 days, you're paying $1,800. Go rent an apartment or buy a house, for that amount of money. It's too expensive for a long-term, I'm going to live here type situation.
On the issue of, environmental impact, both to wildlife, water system in the immediate area, and then sort of downriver effects to Cameron Park, downtown area. I understand that in the event of a flood, cabins are on wheels, but in terms of other facility, I understand permanent facilities will be above the floodplain, but in terms of even things such as sewage, wastewater, and maybe staff can speak to this, how this will be fleshed out in further down the road in the process. But has there been an environmental impact analysis on in the event of, just standard operations and in the event of a flood in that 100-year floodplain?
I don't think they are required. I might call on David Marek. We haven't been asked to provide that, at this point. But we're going to be hooked up to the City of Waco sewer system. So I don't think there's going to be any sewage getting loose. At least I hope not. I know that's what the city intends, is that it not be getting loose. If we have to deal with the Corps of Engineers, they'll have their own set of requirements. City of Waco has required us to do a tree study, and we, therefore preserve the larger trees, under certain rules that they give us. And before, as my understanding, I may be wrong, before we put anything on the bosque, we'd probably need to go to the Corps of Engineers and, comply with whatever studies they want us to do. The city is requiring a traffic study.
Mr. Peters, could you, in terms of like an environmental impact study, what would be, what would that look like, or are there sort of, things down the road in the process that would?
Yeah, the city does not have an environmental impact study requirement for development. Typically that's addressed through the development through the financing of the property to make sure there's nothing in the soil. This is a little bit different situation because you're looking at the environment as far as the impact on habitat for animals and birds, and the impact on the river. That would be something we'd have to look at a little bit closer on what that would be. If that's something the Plan Commission would like to add, we would need to look into that more to determine what that actually would, the scope of that environmental study would be. Yeah, we do have the concern that is a beautiful natural area down by the river, and that's why we did put the condition about the tree survey. And I think a lot of that would cover at least that part of the environmental impact of it on the trees. But that would have to be something we would need to research more, because that's not a normal development requirement that we have in place on properties that develop.
Do y'all have, being in the floodplain with like sewage, wastewater, do y'all have any, once built out, even though tapping into
sure,
yeah, do y'all have any concerns?
Yeah, we have engineering requirements for impacting the floodplain in any negative way as far as flooding, and then there are utility requirements if utilities are in floodplains that they meet certain standards, and David probably could answer those, or even Kurt, our city engineer with our engineers group. But there are specific requirements in our development standards would be addressed at time of development that would address those issues. They cannot negatively impact the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain at all. If there's any development in there, they have to mitigate that in some manner.
It might be helpful just to help us understand kind of the local influence that's going to remain after the sale. So I guess if Mrs. Young is selling it, there are other local representatives that I assume are still going to be involved in working with DACO and, people that are neighbors of this piece of land that will still continue to care about the use of the land past just this transaction. Is that?
Yeah, the owners of DACO are local, and they live here, and I can tell you that, yeah, with the amount of money that's being invested by Northgate and DACO into the property, it's going to be, there for a while and long term. The permit is only to this particular entity, and it's not transferable. And I think the amount of capital they're putting into the project is going to assure that it's a good project. They've hired CP&Y to handle all the engineering problems. That would include any kind of environmental or floodplain issues. But yeah, you will have local ownership. And this is only 100 acres along the river. Between this site and the HEB site is another 100 acres that DACO holds, and they're going to want to develop it someday, either residential or commercial, who knows what. They're not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize their other investment in that 100 acres. And that's why I feel you've got to safeguard about this project. We don't want a problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Can I make one comment?
Ma'am, did you cede your time?
Pardon me? I have about 2 seconds.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
I did an archaeological survey as well. Thank you.
All right. We will close the public hearing at this point. Do you have any comments or motions?
Clint, if I could just ask one more.
We'll reopen the public hearing.
Sorry. Yeah. Just again, not to belittle the floodplain issue. I just want to make sure, because I grew up in Houston, so we've all found out that 1,000-year floods happen a lot more than once every 1,000 years. I just want to make sure that I'm hearing right, that you guys are comfortable that the risks just that exist in this kind of development in the floodplain, you guys are confident that in the further, I guess, process of approving the build out of this property, we can take care of, mitigating the risks in the event the water.
That's correct, yes.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend approval of application to proceed next based on staff findings.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Please poll the commission.
Cole?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes.
Gretzinger?
Yes.
Harris?
Yes.
Mayfield?
Yes.
Bordereau?
Yes. Motion carries. Application is approved. Mr. Peters, do we have?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to remind everybody that the Plan Commission makes recommendations and the City Council makes the final decision, and that hearing will be at the December 17th City Council meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any other business on the agenda?
No, sir.
All right. We are adjourned.